They're already reacting, and our reporter Dwayne Anderson is live at PNP headquarters with reactions. Dwayne?
Well, the People's National Party, they were supposed to have a mass meeting tonight in St. Andrew. I beg your pardon, so we're having a live. The PNP were supposed to have a mass meeting here in St. Andrew tonight, but because of logistic concerns and safety concerns, that was put off. But in a couple of hours, they've managed to put together a watch party of sorts tonight, and they have everything they need to make a watch party successful. They have the drinks, they have the vibes, and they have the people. And they're making good on their watch party. When the date was announced, they erupted into celebration. They are convinced they are going to win it. A lot of people here were playing Nostradamus. They were predicting August 18 and September 3, and so said, so done. One of the men in the engine room of the People's National Party is Dr. Dayton Campbell, the General Secretary. Dr. Dayton Campbell, you join me here on TVJ. We're live, so I'm really hoping the supporters can behave. Dr. Dayton Campbell, how do you read this date being announced? Do you see it as a Prime Minister cornered in terms of options, or what?
He didn't have much options left. I mean, we pretty much told him yesterday that nomination day would be on the 18th of August and election day on the 3rd of September. It's probably the first time in the history of the country that the opposition actually called the election. He was just out of time. The Prime Minister knows that he's afraid to approach the people, and so he waited because he couldn't find a window. We have prepared ourselves and we are ready. The leader is here, he has gone out there and done the work, and we are just excited to get on the ground, and over the next couple of weeks we'll do what we need to do to ensure that when we come back here there will be a much larger crowd and we'll be celebrating.
I'm going to bring in the party president. I'm not a little while, but let me ask you in about 30 seconds. The People's National Party, they've had some momentum coming out of the local government elections, but that is sort of like a stamina run. It's the marathon part of this campaign. In another 2 or 3 weeks, it's a sprint. What are you going to do to ensure that you don't pull up and fall before the finish line?
Well, any athlete will tell you that proper training will prevent that. We have done the preparatory work and we have gone out there. The level of organization in the party now is at an extent that it hasn't been in a long time. The canvassing, the workers, the training and all of those things. We've just been waiting on this moment. We've already done all our schedule to lead up to the 3rd. The constituencies have been notified for this week when the leader is coming. We know when we're launching our manifesto. All of that has been done. There is absolutely no surprise in this to us. The only thing that was thrown off was our meeting, which we will have on Saturday night. So we are fully ready and equipped to go, and we will deliver a victory for the people of Jamaica because they do deserve better.
Thank you, Dr. Dayton Campbell. Obviously, we're pressed for time because our live is short, but I'm now joined by the party president for the People's National Party, Mark Golding. Mr. Golding, step forward a little bit for me, please. Sure. Thank you so much for joining us here on TVJ. Firstly, quickly, what is your reaction? How are you reading this date? Is it a strategy from the Prime Minister, or is this a man who was cornered and really had very few options?
Well, I think he had to call it now because he painted himself into a corner. So much so that the General Secretary was able to accurately say last night that nomination day would be on the 18th and the election to be on the 3rd of September. That's unprecedented, where an opposition General Secretary is able to say accurately what the date would be. And it's because he had no options really. And had he been in a position to confidently move forward into an election, he would have called it long ago. But we are ready, we are prepared, we have done the work, our party is united and strong. We've used the last few months to further refine our message of hope for the Jamaican people. The policies and programs that we are putting forward are relevant and tackle some of the deep-seated issues that face this nation and we have to confront and get over if we are to take Jamaica to the next level. So we're very pleased that finally the election is coming and we know the date and we're ready to roll. Our party is united, well organized. We've done a lot of work strengthening the organization of the party. I've been on the road all over the country. The people have taken very well to me, and I'm looking forward to running through the tape and forming the next government so we can get the work of the people going. And that is what's going to happen.
The Prime Minister used a portion of his address this evening to the Jamaican people to go through some of his plans. You told us that you're going to put out your party's manifesto about Tuesday this week, but just give us the biggest one you can find from the manifesto coming up that you want to put to the Jamaican people this evening. One big thing out of that is a plan or a promise from the People's National Party.
No, I'm not going to be going into that. You'll hear what we have to say in our manifesto on Tuesday when we launch it. And, you know, it covers a lot of different grounds, some major items and other items of importance as well. And we've been, for the last several months, developing some of the key points that we want to get across, coming out of the budget debate, actually. Issues around housing, issues around land, issues around education, and tackling some of the real challenges that the people are facing when it comes to those things. The health sector, we have some strong policies for, and of course, governance, and the whole question of having a government in which the people can have trust and confidence. We are going into an election with a Prime Minister whose statutory declarations for the Integrity Commission are not certified, who's under investigation for the crime of illicit enrichment. That is unprecedented, unheard of in any democracy around the world, and Jamaican people must judge that when they make, you know, when they come to make their decision as to who they think can take this country forward.
Thank you so much, Mark Golding, PNP President, and Dr. Dayton Campbell before him for joining us. As I explained a short while ago, we are really time pressed, but I'll be speaking to them later this evening, and I'll bring a lot more of what they have to say in primetime news and midday news tomorrow on TVJ. But as I said, the People's National Party, not the big meeting they wanted to have tonight, but they do have plans to have a big one on Saturday. But based on what I saw this evening, they were able to get some energized supporters here in a couple of hours and have a party of their own. Reporting from the PNP's headquarters here on Old Hope Road, I'm Dwayne Anderson for TVJ News, and it's back to you in studio.
All right, thank you so much, Dwayne. Now, we're going to be talking more about the date in just a little bit with Milton Walker and Earl Moxham. Just to say, though, the Prime Minister was not out of options. It is true that he went very close to the line, constitutionally speaking, but he did have another 5 weeks before Parliament would have automatically dissolved. And as I said, when we come back to talk about the date, we'll talk about more than likely why September 3rd was chosen and therefore why August 18 had to be nominated day. So, you know, it's not really as magical as it's being made to sound. But let's go to Andrea Chisholm first of all at JLP headquarters. Halfway through.
Thank you very much, Dion. Well, we got the dates, August 18 for nomination day and September 3 for the election day. And we are now joined here in Halfway Tree with the campaign director for the Jamaica Labour Party, Dr. Christopher Tufton. Dr. Tufton, thanks for joining us live on TVJ. I know it's a prerogative of the Prime Minister, but are you comfortable with those dates?
Always comfortable. The Prime Minister is our leader, and we have been preparing, and he has guided that process very well. And we're ready. You saw the energy tonight, the numbers and the energy. And when he said those dates, you saw the response. I think the Jamaica Labour Party as an organization is ready. We have great candidates and we have a great platform to campaign on.
When will the JLP be releasing the manifesto?
Well, we have to take it in stages. We released an achievements document. We have been in office for 9+ years. And I think it's important for us to remind and demonstrate that we have been there with a purpose and that people are better off because of that. Once we get that through the population, and that is a work in progress, we will then release the manifesto, which is the aspirational document for where we will go. I can't say this week or next, but it certainly will be released before the time and discussions around it take place.
Can you say how many seats the JLP is predicting for this election?
Well, look at it this way. All 63 seats are up for grabs in this competitive.
But you must be working towards a number, Dr. Tom.
Well, we intend to win the majority of the seats, and all candidates that we have and are fielding qualified to be a member of Parliament. And we're going to work with all of them. But ultimately, we know that it's a competitive process. And what is important is that we remain in government, so we continue the work of the party and the government.
In recent times, we've been seeing a lot of ribbon cutting and groundbreaking. Is this just a mere formality? How ready are those projects?
You know, it's interesting that people are critical of ribbon cuttings and groundbreaking. I thought those were positive things. Nothing that we have done around those two types of activities that do not represent progress and benefit the people of Jamaica.
It's been amplified leading up to the election, though.
Not necessarily. I think it has been made so by those who are critical and who have a reason to be critical. Take the University Hospital of the West Indies, for example, which we broke ground for recently. 14 billion. It started 8 years ago because it went through a process. Spanish Town Hospital started many years ago. So a lot of what we have labored hard to do as a government have been coming through over time. And I think it is well within our right, particularly in a competitive environment, to show the progress that we are making. The others would have done the same thing. I think they are just upset that we're doing it, and it's showing them up, because when they were there, there were so many gaps in cutting ribbons. We have had to be cutting more than usual to play catch up in the development of the country.
Dr. Tufton, the non-certification of the Prime Minister's statutory declarations continue to be a hot-button topic on the campaign trail. What discussions have the hierarchy of the JLP had on the issue?
Well, look at it this way. We have discussions all the time on a range of issues. As it relates to the Prime Minister's own issues with the IC, I think he is well within his right to exercise the option of challenging some of the conclusions that have been drawn. I believe all of us have that right. It's a right that we have fought for as a people, whether you're on one side or the other. And I think we must allow that process to take its course. He has major issues with some of the conclusions or the findings. And he, like every Jamaican, deserves the opportunity to make his point and to use the courts if necessary. So we don't have an issue with it. In fact, we don't think the Jamaican people are as bothered with that as our detractors or opponents are. We believe that the Jamaican people are about water, it's about roads, it's about jobs, it's about poverty reduction, and those are the things that we have done well in. And the Prime Minister has been the leader of that process as head of the cabinet. So we believe people see a lot more positive in Andrew Holness than by the distractions of some of the other things, which may be necessary to ventilate. We're not saying that, I'm not saying that, but I think he is entitled to due course just like anyone else.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Christopher Tufton, the campaign director for the Jamaica Labour Party. Dion, it's back to you.
Thank you so very much, Andrea. Okay, so let me just remind you very quickly what the Constitution says about the election, okay? Parliament's term is 5 years. You start counting the 5 years, though, not from the election day, which last time was September 3, 2020. That's not when you start. You start counting September 15, 2020, which was the first sitting of the Parliament. The Parliament, as I said, then runs for 5 years, so the Prime Minister can advise the GG at any point to dissolve Parliament and call the election. If the Prime Minister doesn't do that, the Parliament automatically dissolves after 5 years, which would have been September 14. After Parliament dissolves, then there's up to 3 months within which an election can be called. So theoretically, even if not ideally, we could have had an election anytime up to December 14. All right. So Milton Walker with me and Earl Moxham on Zoom. So first of all, September 3rd, I was looking back at the numbers, Milton, and they've only actually been 6 months in which elections have actually been called. And September, we're now going to see 3 elections in September.
And all on the 3rd.
All on the 3rd.
2007 when Bruce Golding won, and the last one in 2020 when Andrew Holness won a second term for the JLP, which is, I think, the clear reason why they've gone for September 3rd, and that was the date that we've been hearing for months as the likely election day. February and I think December are also been popular months for calling elections as well.
Yes. Earl, you want to come in on that?
Yes, well, you and Milton have already emphasized that point. I would just add 2 things. Given the fact that the JLP has been successful on both previous occasions on which we have had the September 3 election, I suppose in keeping with the sort of superstition of Jamaican politics, it is not surprising that the Prime Minister has selected September 3 again. But just also to remind the nation that we also had a September, if you want to call it, we had a September vote in 1961, and that was September 19th, I believe, 1961, when the Jamaican population went to the polls in the referendum to determine whether we should remain with the West Indies Federation or not. Ultimately, they chose for Jamaica to leave the Federation, and again, that was a loss for the PNP because it was the PNP under Norman Manley that had taken Jamaica into Federation and had championed our remaining there. So September has not been very good for the People's National Party historically.
Thanks so much, Earl. And I should add, as you say that my numbers were based on since independent Jamaica. So we've had, as Milton indicated, 4 elections in February, 1 in March, 1 in April. This will now make 3 in September, 2 in October, and 4 in December. Also interesting, Earl, in terms of the venue of calling the election, because Prime Minister Andrew Holness has now called 3 elections, but this is actually the first one that he has called in Halfway Tree, which was a popular venue for his predecessors, PJ Patterson and Portia Simpson Miller. They always went to Halfway Tree to call their elections, but it's Mr. Golding's first.
Mr. Holness.
Mr. Holness, I beg your pardon, Dr. Holness.
Yes. And it was in 1967 that Sir Donald Sangster announced the election that year in Halfway Tree as well. I don't recall whether, I haven't researched where the 1962 election was announced, but I would not be surprised if it was Halfway Tree as well. I believe the 61 referendum was called in Halfway Tree also.
Yes, Mr. Holness in 2011 was in Mandeville, and 2020
was in Parliament
because of COVID.
Because of COVID, yes. There were obviously no mass events because of the pandemic. So you couldn't have large crowds gathering. In fact, there were clear restrictions on the number of persons who could assemble anywhere in this country. So it was Parliament. All MPs were in masks. Only the Prime Minister had removed his mask to make that announcement. It was quite odd because it's been a bit of a tradition in Jamaica to have the election announcement being made at a rally, and a mass rally as well.
Okay. Huge crowd in Halfway Tree today, Milton. I mean, massive.
It was, and as you could see from the drone shots, at one point I was trying to figure out where exactly was the stage, because it was us, you know. And they changed it. Traditionally, the stage has been in front of about where the transport center and a bit above the entrance for Jamaica National. It was the other way around that I think they flipped it. I'm not sure why they did that, but you know, that's entirely up to the persons who are organizing the rally for the Jamaica Labour Party. But that's where the stage has been in the past traditionally. Mm-hmm.
A lot of emphasis, Earl, on we've been hearing from the JLP on their achievements, and we heard Dr. Tufton just now also speaking to Andrea make mention of that again, so that's what they're concentrating on now. In the Prime Minister's address this evening, though, we did hear him make mention of quite a few things he said his administration plans to do in the next term. Anything stood out for you?
Well, I would say that the emphasis on housing and the promise to add another 60,000 to the previously announced 70,000 new housing units, and he broke them down in terms of various categories. I think that is one important area of policy focus that he believes will connect well with the Jamaican populace. So I think that is one of those measurable promises that you can follow in terms of the extent to which he's able to deliver on that. He has been criticized in respect of previous commitments in respect of housing. And like I say, it's one of those that you can easily track. So I found that one to be very interesting. I just want to go back to the question of venues, Dion, and twin that with the question of crowd size, because it was in Montego Bay rather than Kingston that Michael Manley announced the 1980 election, and he was so impressed with the crowd that turned out that he made the famous 100,000 strong cannot be wrong, and he could not have been more wrong that year.
Yeah, absolutely. The housing, and going back to the housing point now, that's going to be interesting, Milton, because both parties, I think, have figured out or heard from the young people that, look, this is a major issue for us. We want to hear what you're doing, and we're hearing proposals now coming from both parties, certainly on that. Indeed.
I mean, because for the average young person now to buy a house in Jamaica, even a young professional, it's extremely difficult. Housing prices are through the roof, and the part of the challenge is that the country, we're just not building enough housing units each year, and for them to come in at an affordable price. Of course, developers will tell you that the price of land is a big factor in what pushes the prices up, but we cannot have a country where a young person leaving college or working a regular blue-collar job and earning, you know, a decent income simply cannot afford a house. That's one of the biggest aspirations that any young person would have leaving school and going into work. And if they can't fulfill that's what leads to your brain drain. That's what leads to your, disenchantment and people just being fed up. And we already know we have significant levels of apathy in the election process and the political process as well. And that needs to change.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us. People Act says that nomination day has to be at least 5 clear days after the announcement of the election day. What that means is that you can't count the day of the announcement, you can't count nomination day, so it could not have been earlier than Monday, August 18. One of the things the Prime Minister announced as well, though, is that we're going to be having local government by-elections on the same day. Take a look.
I also wish to inform you that local government by-elections in the Chancery Hall Division, the Olympic Gardens Division, the Seabright Gardens Division, and the Denham Town Division will be held concurrently with the general election in those constituencies.
Labour rights be ready now. Labour rights be ready now. Ring the bell, let every know. Ring the bell, let every know. Labour rights be ready now.
I will ask the Minister of Local Government to formally make the announcement.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Just to advise that after consultation on a letter written by Kingston's mayor, we have taken the decision to endorse the announcement made by the most honorable Prime Minister. So all 4 divisions on election day will have their rightful representation.
So local government elections are normally announced by the local government minister. The Prime Minister, I think, kind of stole his thunder a little bit there. And then Minister Mackenzie basically just coming on to endorse and to confirm the announcement already made by the Prime Minister. Now, this is something people have been saying for a long time. Why we can't have local government elections on the same day as general and save money? This is just, quote unquote, just by elections, Milton. But I don't know. It could be, I don't know if it's a first step towards active.
Yeah, in fact, I don't recall any local government by-elections, and Earl can obviously come in on this at all in previous general elections that we've had by-elections, and these, have been out for some time. 2 of them are in the Prime Minister's constituency, Seabright Gardens and Olympic Gardens, and Chancery in Dwayne Smith, that's the Northwest St. Andrew, Nigel Clark's old seat, and Denham Town, obviously, in West Kingston. So they're all in Jamaica Labour Party seats. And I believe the JLP are expected to win all 4. They should be able to win them comfortably, using past voting patterns.
Yeah, Earl?
Yes, I can't recall it ever having been done before, but it is indeed in keeping with what has been recommended by so many interest groups over the years. And based on what Mr. Mackenzie said, it seemed that he had the concurrence of the People's National Party as well, certainly from the mayor. It sounded as if the mayor, who is a member of the People's National Party, concurred with the government ongoing in this direction.
Okay, there was another point you wanted to raise, Earl?
Yes, let me say that I wasn't necessarily expecting the Prime Minister to bring this up tonight, but my perspective, I perceive that both parties are studiously avoiding a particular issue because it is so sensitive. And at some point, they need to be asked upfront where they stand on how they will deal with an increasingly erratic Trump administration or respond to the sort of erratic actions of Donald Trump over the next 3 years, because he's so unpredictable. And we saw what happened with the tariffs. And therefore, significant areas of Jamaican policy operations could be affected by the whims and fancies of Donald Trump, who I believe, according to how he operates, even if he has never heard of President James Monroe, it seems that the Monroe Doctrine is back in vogue under his administration.
Yes, and on that point, perhaps, Earl, linking to therefore this issue of the manifestos and whether or not that would be covered in them. As Dwayne indicated, the People's National Party has said they're launching their manifesto on Tuesday. And again, it's something I'd have to check, but it sounds to me like one of the earliest I've heard of a manifesto being launched. It's normally about 2 weeks before the election, if we're lucky, Milton.
Indeed, and for this to come out before nomination day, I was quite surprised when I saw the notification, I think earlier today or yesterday, that the PNP will be launching their manifesto on Tuesday. And particularly also since the PNP have been saying they're reluctant to tell the country what they're planning to do going forward because they're afraid that the Jamaica Labour Party will steal their ideas. I think that was a misstep. I think the PNP should have been putting elements of their manifesto out in the months that they've been campaigning, so that it would have been clearly articulated, clearly put forward to the people and to the voters. And for now, that, election is called, that they'll be consolidating and, just putting together a final document and encompassing everything that they've been laying out before by the party officials on their campaign over the last few months, in fact, from last year.
And let me just say quickly what I have been saying, that when you hear people now calling for manifesto, I don't think anybody seriously think that can only mean a 20 or 30 page booklet or book. Clearly, it has to mean sharing those ideas across social media, using videos, using all kinds of different means. The points that people have been making is that it's time to tell us what you plan to do. Earl, comment on this issue of manifesto.
I sometimes wonder at the utility of it, given that so many aspects of it are quickly forgotten, or some of the goals set out are not easily attainable. I would also say, Milton, that the timing, or if you put out your manifesto too early, it's a double-edged sword, in that, particularly for an opposition, because the government having the power of the purse and the power of saying we are in a position to implement X or Y, or to respond with a counter policy. And also, perhaps the most significant policy promise or idea that came out of the Jamaica Labour Party in opposition in 2016 was that having to do with the income tax threshold, which was a real winner, it seemed, with the populace. And that came at the 11th hour, so to speak, heading into the election. And in fact, it wrong-footed the PNP and might have been a major factor in the PNP narrowly losing that election.
Yeah, the PNP, I thought, absolutely messed that one up in terms of the response. They thought it was nonsense. They clearly thought it was unattainable. They didn't think people were taking it seriously, while it was catching public attention.
Indeed.
And there was never, until maybe way too late, a comprehensive and solid attempt at a serious response from the PNP.
Oh, definitely on that one. And I agree with Earl. I think it's a fair point that you don't want to put too much of your manifesto out. But, that issue, though, points to another problem which I think the PNP has, which is how different are you, certainly on economic policy, from this government? And the answer to that really is no. The current economic policy was started by this government, by the PNP, under Dr. Peter Phillips as Finance Minister, Portia Simpson Miller as Prime Minister. And the government has continued and implemented it. They've maintained, the primary surplus, all the macroeconomic targets, continued with the debt to GDP ratio, despite, having a little shift in dates because of the COVID pandemic. So the PNP are in a bit of a bind. What different can we do or come to the nation regarding the economic policy, which generally is a core of what a government is going to put to the voters in terms of offering them an alternative? And the PNP are in a little bit of a difficulty because they are not too different, they're not different from what the current administration is implementing. I must say, I think it was last year, early last year, the opposition did float the idea of reducing the primary surplus that the government has. I think it's at 5%, and they were suggesting it go to 3% or thereabouts. Don't hold me to those figures, but something along those lines, which would free up about $20 billion, Dion, for them to spend primarily on social programs. The architect of the current economic policy, Dr. Peter Phillips, their former leader, came out strongly and said no. He disagreed with his success and the current leadership of the PNP for that policy. I've not really heard them articulate it lately, so I'm wondering if that's something that they have shelved. And that's one of the challenges that I was alluding to earlier in making that point, that they're in a bit of a bind in terms of offering a clear alternative to the current economic policy.
Well, in the weeks now going up to September 3rd, both parties obviously are going to be probably knocking on your door, all of you people trying to get your vote. The PNP, again, I think has a steeper hill to climb. When you look at the 2020 figures, right? Yes, it was a COVID year. We only had a 38% voter turnout. But when you look at the number of voters the PNP lost compared to the JLP, the PNP got nearly 128,000 fewer votes than they had in 2016. The JLP numbers were less as well, but they were only about 29,000 less. So what you've seen over the past 2 election cycles is the PNP significantly losing numbers of votes. The JLP went up in 2016, down again in 2011. In 2020, in fact, their 2011 numbers were just about the same as their 2020 figures. So the question is, what does the PNP do now in the next few weeks if they are to win?
Let me put it even more stark. Just a second, Earl. In 2016, there are in 2020, there are 133,000 persons who voted for the PNP in 2016 that didn't vote for them. In 2020, there are 158,000 persons who voted for the PNP in 2011 that didn't come out and vote for them, right? So that's well over 100,000. They lost 158,000 voters in 2020 that had voted for them in 2011. And when you compare it to the 2016 numbers, it's 133,000. For the PNP to be in this game, they need to get at least 140,000 voters back to voting for them to be competitive in this election.
And of course, they have to flip 18 seats as well to win. Earl, you were saying?
Well, on that point, I think it might be, the better comparison perhaps might be with the 2024 local government election, in which the PNP won the national vote. And in fact, I think if you extrapolate from that in terms of the numbers, which I don't have in front of me now, but that was a significant improvement. And if you looked at the divisions across various constituencies, you will see that the PNP outperformed the JLP in significant divisions, even within constituencies that the JLP has done well in consistently. So I think that would be the point of encouragement for the PNP. As to whether they have built sufficiently on that over the ensuing year, that is the important question.
But remember, Earl, despite them winning the popular vote, when you extrapolated the local government results of February 2024, the JLP actually would have won more seats on the constituency in the national map than the PNP. And if it were a general election, the JLP would still have formed government, albeit with a very reduced majority.
Which is why, Milton, I'm saying that the question is, to what extent have they built on the gains made at that point in 2024? And I think since then, they have been up and down in the polls. So I don't think we can completely arrive at a conclusion. What I would say is that that is something for them to perhaps take some encouragement from, but ultimately, have they done sufficiently to build on that?
Now, in 2020, of course, we didn't see full campaigning. They couldn't have done full campaigning either party because we're in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic at that point in time. So it's been then, since 2016, that's 9 years since the political activists have really been out there. And I think you can see them on the campaign trail. You can see that they're thoroughly enjoying the process. But in terms of voters and what has to be done now to win over the voters, tell me what you both are expecting to see, what we need to see over the next few weeks. Milton?
I think we want to see more engagement, and certainly of the young people, and engagement of independent voters as well. In some way, I think the parties, particularly the PNP, have been really talking more to their base rather than the nation. And
I think that's because of the figures you are trotting out, that they're trying to get back that base.
Yes,
and they probably think it doesn't make any sense at this point going so much after the uncommitted if they can't pull back their own voters.
And indeed, they would have to get their base back, as that's the base for them to start,
right.
You know, the foundation. But yes, so I think they need to broaden the message, to talk to more of the uncommitted, the independent voters and the young people. Jamaica is a young population, and the voters list is certainly skewed towards them. And any party that hopes to become victorious in a general election need young people. Old people, yes, or older folks tend to be reliable voters. They tend to be the ones to go out and vote, but there are far more young people there than older voters. So they need to engage them, and I expect to see more, rather than mass rallies, but more, focus groups, spot meetings where they're speaking to smaller crowds. I expect to see far more political advertisements on television and in the mass media as well as, of course, in social media.
Of course, Earl, you're based in rural Jamaica now. Tell me what kind of activities you've been seeing and expect to see.
I've seen some spot meetings in various communities, Dion, and for me, I would say that is more effective. As far as these mass rallies are concerned, and one can understand a mass rally such as we had tonight in Halfway Tree, and I suspect the PNP will hold an equivalent one at some point in the near future. However, I find these mass rallies, to be not particularly effective at convincing people. At least that's how I perceive it. They are more the theater of the absurd. And you wonder, do these parties and their leaders, do they caucus before they go to they go off to these rallies, to these mass meetings? Do they sit and think about what it is they want to convey to the people and how they will do so? Do they understand that in 2025, more so than ever before, they are not just communicating with the committed, they're on the ground with them. Some of whom have followed them from every nook and cranny of the island. So even in the particular locale that they're having that meeting, they aren't only speaking to a small percentage of the people in the particular constituency. So what's the point of a lot of what we see and hear at these rallies? I think they come away much the loser for some of the nonsense that happens at these rallies, rather than advancing their cause, as they would do, I suspect, in smaller spot meetings and engaging with the people.
Okay, so I know Milton wants to come in on this. I have to say this is one of those areas where I don't necessarily agree with Earl, because I think different fora are for different things. Yeah. And I do not think...
It's no longer confined to that particular theater.
I understand you.
People. And what do we focus on the following morning?
Earl, I understand you, but a mass rally, I don't care what them go up there and say. A mass rally is not a place for trying to convince anybody of anything. It's a place for precisely what we've been talking about. Energizing your base, getting your party workers active, getting people in your party to feel that you are on a roll and that it makes sense for them left their yard, go work for you, and go vote on election day. You cannot at the same time be appealing to people like, hold on, Earl, come in. You cannot at the same time be appealing to people who sit down in a them bed and watch it on YouTube. You cannot do both things effectively.
And my response to that is, if for the next 2, 3, 4 days thereafter, you have to be explaining yourself because you misspoke or you said something so ridiculous that it has left the wider populace incensed, what did you achieve ultimately?
That's a different point.
Right.
That's not the issue of a mass rally itself. That's the issue of the nonsense when they talk when they get up on stage. Yeah. But you can have a mass rally without people putting their foot in their mouth. Yeah. Unbelievable as it might seem.
We're not having that.
Earl, I'll disagree with Earl on this one, although I do think we do need to have smaller meetings. First of all, I think there's a tradition in this country. It's part of our political culture. And in the past, a lot more persons used to go to rallies, literally just walk to the one in your area, drive to the one in your area. Now there's a lot of busing, which is part of, mobilizing and energizing your base. I was in Montego Bay this weekend, Dion, and this afternoon I saw a crowd by Iron Shore and about 8 buses, obviously, waiting to take them in. And they're there just, having a good time, taking pictures and playing some music. And that's part of the, the energizing and feel good. You go into a rally and for many people, it's fun. You're going to town, you're going to Spanish Town or wherever to have a good time, or Montego Bay.
Maybe we should ask Earl if he thinks politics is fun. Earl?
It can be.
Everything can't serious, Earl.
Yeah.
What's that?
Everything can't serious.
No, you are missing my point, Dion. You are missing my point. And you and I have known each other so long that
Earl, but also it's
the point I'm making.
It's a Caribbean thing also, because
you can have fun without making an absolute fool of yourself.
And I agree I'm not arguing with you at all. Remember, I did say you can have rallies without this constant putting your foot in your mouth and ending up with a lawsuit on your desk. May I
make one point quickly? I think we have all ignored so far the fact that September 3 will have implications for the new school year, the start of the new school year.
Yeah.
Yes, the new school year, I'm advised, normally starts on the first Monday in September. This year, the first Monday is the 1st of September, in fact.
Yes.
So
what I've heard is that they may push it back to the 8th or start it on the Thursday or probably Friday because the election day would be on the Wednesday, September 3. I at one point thought and heard that they were considering the 10th or the 9th, those dates, which the school would have started for a week because the party wanted to see how the new rural school bus system would have played out and to try and get some mileage from that. They have obviously decided not to do that and go for September 3. But it is a problem. Of course, you could always, extend the term at the end or at the midterm, so it can be made back up pretty easily. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the issue there, I suspect tomorrow, well, I know our newsroom obviously will follow up on the issue tomorrow. I suspect by tomorrow we'll hear a statement coming out from the Education Ministry. They probably have it prepared already, couldn't send it out until the election date announced. I'm pretty sure we'll be able to get that information for our viewers for tomorrow. Yes. In relation to the rural school bus system, now I think this was supposed to be a center point of the JLP's achievements for the term, and they're being dogged by controversy. People are sending videos, this one happened to this one happened to this one, and we see them pushing back. But Earl, what do you see in terms of this particular issue, how it may or may not play?
It probably, I don't think the Prime Minister addressed it directly tonight, because it has become quite contentious, and there are positives and negatives. Certainly the idea of providing a school bus system for our students cannot be ignored. It's an important policy issue. And when I say the Prime Minister did not touch it directly, he did speak of a transport system for the students. But in respect of the controversy surrounding the initiative that was recently announced by the minister and some of what we have been seeing of the school buses, the yellow buses that have been brought in, I think that is going to continue to be fodder for the campaign.
The other thing that I thought, and Earl alluded to it just now, was he announced that there will be free transport for all students, including tertiary students, for the first 2 months of the school year, September and October. Again, that's a direct response, Dion, to the cries of the issues that students are having getting to school across the island, and particularly in rural Jamaica. And of course, the cost to parents who have to find, if you have 3 kids, that could be as much as $1,000 one way for all 3 children just to go to school. And that's a significant sum for many parents.
Yes, you mentioned though, September and October, the Prime Minister announced free transportation to all school children, including tertiary, which obviously tracks with the election. That announcement around election. The issue as well, just to say, I think there still are questions to be asked about what's happening with these rural school buses. And I agree with Earl, as somebody who grew up in country as well. I think everybody understands the importance of a rural school bus system, but there are questions to be asked about what's happening. And I think the response that generally is being given, say a bad mind, people are bad mind, the bus them, really, that's not sufficient, and we need to push past that.
Yes. The other thing I'd want to raise, Dion, is what I consider, I found it, they've done it before, but it was a real frontal attack, albeit in a subtle way, by the Prime Minister against the opposition leader and the senior PNP member, Peter Bunting, about them benefiting from the high interest rate policy in the 1990s. And, of course, that's part of the challenge that the government then experienced, which led to FinSec and the collapse of sections of the financial sector. And it seems to be, to me, a direct response to the attacks or the criticisms of his, challenges that he's having with his statutory declarations and the investigations for illicit enrichment, etc., etc. And he went on, he spent some time on this and said, I didn't make my money on the backs of the Jamaican people. I'm not a tapanaris. I said I bought 2 taxis and then I opened a taxi company. I think that was the first time I've ever heard him say something like that. I didn't know that he did. And then he also said...
That came out in the Craig Beresford
affidavit. But for him to say it publicly here.
Okay.
And then he said
wrap you up in 30 seconds.
He went through the Jamaican struggle and so on. So that to me seems to be a direct response to those criticisms, and that perhaps you'll see and hear more of that on the campaign trail.
I know that the PNP is going to have to respond. Earl, 10 seconds, final comment.
Well, I look forward to the rest of this campaign season. In fact, I look forward to it being over and done with, and we can move on with our lives thereafter with whatever choices the people of Jamaica have made.
And I think a lot of Jamaicans would say, and so say all of us. All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for having been with